No Country for Old Men was released in 2007 and it picked up the Best Picture Oscar in 2008. It's directed by the Coen brothers and it stars Javier Bardem, Tommy Lee Jones and Josh Brolin. It follows the story of this man played by Brolin who stumbles across the aftermath of a gangland kind of drug deal gone wrong. All the gangland people have been shot. They're mostly all dead except for one guy. But he goes in and he basically takes the money. He finds the money, takes the money, off he goes with it. Unfortunately for him, a hitman played by the mushroom-haired Javier Bardem. A truly horrific hairdo, it's got to be said. Hot on the trail, I should say, of this money. Throw into the mix the sheriff, played by Tommy Lee Jones, who is trying to track down both Hitman and Brolin's character, just to help him, really, to get him out of the trouble that he now finds himself in. It's a strange film, it's got to be said, because it doesn't follow any traditional three-act structure that I can tell, at any rate. It doesn't seem to fit neatly into the usual box that films do, where you can look at them structurally and character-driven wise and think, well, yeah, this is how it all plays out. It's got three central characters, and at any one point in the film, either one of them could be our central protagonist slash antagonist. I mean, clearly Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem, is the antagonist, and yet the film at times seems to shift to his perspective, as if he were the main character. Now, the film is based on a book by Cormac McCarthy, and I feel like it is quite a nihilistic look at humanity, at life, at the world. And I think that Cormac McCarthy tends to be quite nihilistic in general anyway. I don't know much about him personally. I don't know what his beliefs are, but certainly from the movies I've watched that are based on his material, there tends to be a heavy dose of nihilism that runs throughout. I think this world that is created in this film is basically turning to crap. God is seemingly absent from this world, and as a result of that, mankind is left to his own devices, and it does not look pretty. And I think we see that predominantly through the eyes of the Tommy Lee Jones character. You know, he's a sheriff, he looks at the worst of humanity, he comes to the aftermath of crimes constantly, sees murder and goodness knows what on a daily basis, and he doesn't know what to do with it. You know, he's reached a place in his life where he's often looking back with nostalgia at what may have seemingly been a better time. I think every generation probably goes through that to some degree. I think we all kind of look back to the past with the belief that it was somehow better, when in actual fact, I think mankind is just mankind. We don't know who's steering the ship half the time. And I think this film does a very good job of kind of showing that and wrestling with that, but without actually having any answers. You know, if it did have answers, I'm not sure that they would be all that satisfying. But certainly it is a depiction of the human condition, where we find ourselves. It's a violent world in which people don't really get rewarded for their good deeds. They don't really get rewarded for the bad deeds either. It's just a mess. The whole thing's a mess. Brolin's character, he takes the money and he leaves the one guy, the one gang member who's still alive. He's shot up pretty bad, but he's still alive. He wants water. But he takes the money and he goes. And in that instance, like, you're kind of left thinking, okay, so you're not a nice man. And yet it keeps him up at night. It keeps him up to the point where he's like, nope, I gotta go. I gotta get me some water and I gotta take it back to that guy. And because of that, for me at any rate, I'm then rooting for him. You know, he couldn't do anything about everything at the scene. That had already taken place. So why not take the money? You know, is the moral kind of question. Would you take the money? Would you? I mean, personally, I think I would hand it into the police. I'd call the police, but irrespective of what I would do, you know, the guy just walks away with some money that's just there for the taking, essentially. The fact that he goes back to try and save this one man who, let's face it, given the world that he exists in, probably ain't that nice a guy anyway. He's probably done some pretty heinous stuff, and yet Brolin's character says, "You know what? I can't sleep knowing that I could have done something to save that guy." So he goes out there with some water. It's because of that that suddenly he finds Shiger on his tail. If he'd have not gone back, no one would ever know that he'd have been there and he took the money. But because he goes back, because he tries to do the right thing, a world of hell opens up in his life. So yeah, that's interesting. That's again like a very nihilistic kind of take on good deeds. They're not rewarded. Now I find the pursuit of Llewellyn Moss, which is the main kind of crux, the main driving force of the film, the story, so to speak, is this, you know, the pursuit by Anton Chigurh of Llewellyn Moss, the Brolin character. I find all that stuff gripping. You know, I'm really engaged. Like every step of the way, I'm with Llewellyn. I kind of like this guy. You know, he's a bit rough around the edges. I even like the way he speaks to his wife, although his wife kind of gives as good as she gets, and you can tell that they do actually love each other. So that kind of, some of the stuff he says you kind of let slide because it's just it's just a personality thing that both of them kind of have, and there's a game between them, so it's done in a loving way kind of thing, if such talk could ever be considered loving. But it's amusing, and the film is amusing because of things like that. You know, there's lots of moments of humour. The way that characters look at certain things is quite humorous at times, but then also it can flip on a dime to something really sinister. And you know, you think about the way that Chigurh plays a coin toss game with a gas store clerk. He believes in fate, clearly. You know, he flips a coin to make decisions, and it's just like he leaves things up to fate. He doesn't really look at anything as a moral choice. It's just, you either want to do it or you don't. And he wants to do this stuff. He, you know, for whatever reason, that's the choices he makes. He likes it, I guess. He's a scary character. He's like a boogeyman. He's this boogeyman that we don't know anything about, which I really like. I like the fact that they don't go into a lot of backstory on this guy. He just comes and then he goes. And it's like he's like a ghost. He's like a boogeyman. But the way that he pursues Llewellyn and the way that Llewellyn reacts to the things that he does, I find really engaging. And it's like that for most of the film until something happens. Obviously, it's an old film now. You've probably already seen it, but I'll give spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, if you've not seen this film and you still want to go and watch it, one, I would say, why have you not done so already? But two, this is the time to turn away or, you know, turn off, because I'm going to give spoilers. Because I find it almost impossible to talk about this film without talking about this one particular element, which is this. You've been warned. So, final act of the film. You know, Llewellyn Moss. He's on the run. He's got this money. He wants to try and meet up with his wife, and he gets killed. He gets killed by the mob guys that are chasing this money down. He's not even killed by Anton Chigurh. So Chigurh don't even find his prey. It's just some random bunch of mob guys who catch up with Llewellyn and kill him. And we don't see it. We don't see it on screen. We just see the aftermath. Here's the thing. I watched that scene and I think it feels very deliberate. That to me feels like a very deliberate choice. Why would you not show that? Okay, that is a very deliberate choice, to just show the aftermath and show that, oh yeah, he is dead, but we don't get to see what happened, what transpired. And because that feels very deliberate, I have to ask myself, well, okay, if that's deliberate, why? Why was that choice made? Why did the Coen brothers choose to do it that way? What are we meant to glean from that? And I feel, and this, again, this is just my own subjective opinion. I could be wrong, but I come away from it feeling this particular way, which is that it's senseless. It's just, it leaves you feeling hollow. You know, if we stuck with Llewellyn and we saw what transpired and we made it a bit more action-packed, and then ultimately he doesn't get out at the end, he does die, there's a certain sense of finality there. We've followed him along his journey and we've come to his inevitable conclusion. But not seeing that conclusion, not seeing how it plays out, it leaves you feeling hollow. And that's where the deliberate nature comes in, I would say, is because that's what it wants you to feel, because that's how Tommy Lee Jones's character feels. That's how Tom Bell feels. He's the sheriff, he's trying to save this guy, and yet he rocks up too late. He rocks up to the aftermath, and the aftermath of scenes plays heavily in this film. You know, at the start, when Llewellyn Moss becomes involved, becomes embroiled in this, he becomes embroiled because he walks into the aftermath. Or you flip to the end of that and we get Tommy Lee Jones walking in to the aftermath. In much the same way, only he knows a bit of the backstory, you know, and we know a lot more because we've seen it play out. We've grown to care for this guy, but we're reminded of the way that he stumbled in to the aftermath earlier on in the film. You know, I think there's a parallel between those scenes. Except we didn't feel anything in the first aftermath. We feel something here. We feel hollow. We feel betrayed in many ways, that this guy's story hasn't, you know, the conclusion to it hasn't been shown. It's been snatched from us. We are meant to feel that way because that's how Tommy Lee Jones's character feels. When he looks at the senseless violence in the world, he comes away not knowing what to do with it. Can it be made sense of? And I think the answer is no, essentially. You know, certainly Tom Bell, by the end of this film, he can't make sense of it. And I think neither do we, the audience. Stuff just happens. Violence happens. People are responsible for that violence. But to try and make sense of it is quite futile. And that's depressing. It's depressing to not have any answers. Now, obviously, I look at violence through, you know, like I look at anything, it's through my Christian lens. I can weigh things up through the way I look at life, which is through my Christian belief system, and that certainly helps me in regard to understanding certain matters. But as I say, in the world created in this film, it is a film in which God is seemingly absent. When you don't have the religious kind of, I dare say crutch to lean on to help you get through these times, these acts of violence, how do you process it? It's a double-edged sword, because I see what the Coen brothers are doing. I see what they're going for, the message that they're trying to convey, and I think they convey that beautifully, brilliantly. And yet, the other side to that double-edged sword is that, well, I do feel hollow. I come out of it walking away, scratching my head, thinking, okay, there's no sense to any of this. Which again, it's what they're going for. I feel, at any rate. I could be totally wrong, but that's what I feel they're going for, and it's not a good place to be left in by the end of the film. It's expertly done. They've got you to that place in an expert way when it comes to filmmaking, but as with a lot of these movies, it's not a place I want to be in. So I'm kind of left in this place of like, I really respect filmmaking here. I think the film is brilliantly made. It's top notch. It's expertly done. And yet I don't like the way it makes me feel. That's just my thoughts on No Country for Old Men. But what about you? How do you feel about the film? And do you have a different take on it? You know, I'm open to hearing any take on the movie, because I do think it is one of those interesting films in which multiple takes could be had, and I'd be quite happy to hear somebody else's take. You might change the way I view the film, my perspective on it, but that's my perspective. What is yours? Leave it down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.